Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia explores the fundamental law of life and how understanding it, along with the necessity of rest, provides a framework for navigating power, authority, communication, and achieving genuine freedom and healing. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Virginia, the last couple of weeks, we touched very briefly on power and authority. And these two concepts can be very confusing for some people. Could you help break this down and explain how they work within the constructs of rest?
I think it's difficult to understand it if you don't ask yourself, wait, power and authority. What's the law? What's the law? And the number one universal law that we focus on is the law of life. Is the authority that I use constructive in advancing life? Is the power that I have constructive in advancing life? And if the answer is no, we're acting in unlawful ways. Intuitively, when we're not well, we immediately desire wellness. Why? Because the law that governs our body is disrupted somehow because we're not feeling well. There's a breakdown in communication between my spleen, my stomach, my heart, and systems, cardiovascular, digestive system, who knows? But there is a breach in communication between my systems and the organism, my organs, and how they're supposed to function together. So there's laws that make the function of each thing predictable, predictive. But when the communication is breached, we're not well. We've been talking a little bit about power and authority in the context of rest. But if we don't have a regard for what's lawful and what's not, power and authority don't matter. It's the law that gives context for how we use our authority and what power we exercised in the context of that. So we'll make it really simple. We'll start with us. There is a law that says you cannot travel 100 miles an hour on a street that has lights and pedestrians. Why did they establish that law? To preserve life, to preserve the life of the pedestrians and of the motorists, to preserve life. The preservation of life is the fundamental purpose and anatomy of the law. So it's the anatomy of the law, and it's the preservation of life. And that's a very simple exciting. When we break that law, we have to make an appeal we have to show up at court. And when we show up at court, depending on how egregious the crime was, well, when we show up in court, we have an advocate, we have an accuser, generally a police officer, sometimes the family of those we've injured, and then we have a judge. And then we have somebody taking note of every single thing that transpired, every single word that is spoken in that courtroom. Whether people realize it or not, your name, my name, all of our names is written in this book of life. And I know this to be an absolute fact because we've all had deja vu moments, and I mention those a lot. It's almost as if we've been living in eternity past. But God said He had foreknowledge of us, and He loved us, and He created us for His pleasure. And in His foreknowledge of us, He wrote our name in the book of life. And intuitively, we have memory of this thing, this reality, this fact, if you will. And to preserve that life, He from the very beginning gave one command: do not eat of this tree or you will begin to die. It's the knowledge of good and evil. I made you like me, pure good and pure and whole and triune, spirit, soul, and body in your very constitution, Adam. So don't eat of this tree because you'll lose that. He didn't say you can't. He said, do not do it. There was one law. Well, we know how the story goes. It wasn't good for that man to be alone. God gave Adam a partner so he could feel whole and be and experience and live out the triune constitution that God has with himself, which is a spirit, the Holy Spirit, and of course the body, the embodiment that is him, which would become Christ, which was Christ. He was there in the beginning. So man was made in that likeness. And the law was, do not do this. Well, of course, he broke the law. What happened immediately when he broke the law? Communication broke down. Communication with the Creator, communication within himself and between him and Eve. Communication broke down all across the board. The communication that broke down immediately was between him and God, and then his spirit, his soul, and his body, and then his mate. And we know because God comes looking for them. And I asked him, where are you? Adam, called Adam, not Eve. And he said, I'm hiding. I'm afraid. That's the first time we hear the word fear. That's why if we're all honest with ourselves, there's really a lot of fear at the root of all of our behavior, beyond the fact that we're disconnected from God and from ourselves. So when that disconnection and that breach in communication happened, it had consequences. And we know that in short order, man had become so corrupt that God only saved a remnant in the form of Noah and his family. And by the way, the Noah's Ark has been found, and it has been spotted and seen. There's photographs. It's a remarkable thing. At the top of some mountain. I think it's in Turkey. I'm not sure. But we know that something happened at that juncture, and God destroyed the world and everything in it. And we know that to be true because there's fossils at the highest peaks of mountains. And that can only happen if, in fact, there was a worldwide flood. But all of this disaster came from one law being broken, and then men becoming a law unto themselves. But the lawgiver is God. Man cannot become a law unto himself in his fallen state because he'll self-destruct as he did. But at rest, we make a case that this breach in communication that took place thousands and thousands of years ago is alive and well in us. But this Christmas, we celebrate that there was a provision made for that breach in communication to restore us to complete wholeness. And all it required was an acknowledgement that there's something wrong. That I don't do the things I want to, and the things I don't want to do, I do. And there's this constant war that's raging within me. And wow, I'm a wretched person. Fundamentally, we all know there's something broken inside of us. And there's this battle that rages. And at rest, we hold that came from a breach in communication. And we believe that restorative health in time happens when we can at least acknowledge that there's a breach in communication between our spirit, our soul, and our body. So what can be done about it? Well, perhaps we can comply that there's a law that is greater than any law we ever really thought about. And the law is a universal principle, and it's the law of life. That I made the world and everything in it, and I made the world out of pure love and desire for pleasure. And then I made Adam and Eve, and I put them in that world for pleasure. They could enjoy each other. And I made them triune beings like me for pleasure. But when the breach in communication or in obedience, whatever you want to call it, began to happen, and they began to die, however you want to refer to that reality, I had to destroy them. And then I created sort of a new world, and I let them begin to populate the world, to be fruitful, to multiply, to subdue, first themselves and then their families, and then dominion. But each person in that family system had power and authority to self-govern. They needed to self-govern. and not become a law unto themselves, but to understand. We just watched God flood the whole world, and he saved Dad and us and the family. And they thoroughly accounted for those narratives. And they were humble and broken and dependent always on God. And the time came where civilization began to be established through Abraham and whatnot, beginning with Noah and his descendants. When God gave 10 commandments, now he commanded it. And I feel like he told Adam not to break that one law in the garden, because there would be consequences. But here on Mount Sinai, he gave them 10 laws. So went from 1 to 10. And he gave them those laws to assure that they would live. If he's giving them a law, it's because they had the authority, right? They had the authority to, right here, consent according to the dictates of their conscience and their will. He gave them a law because everybody had the authority to comply according to the counsel of their own conscience. And the power was the faculty in them to perform what their will desired. In other words, to proceed according to the counsel of the will. So authority is that capacity to self-govern, and power is that thing that helps you act out according to the highest calling of your will. But none of this matters if we don't understand the law, because if you don't know what the law is, how do you know when you breach the law? God initially told them you're going to die if you eat of this tree, and they did it anyway. And sure enough, they were all killing themselves and self-destructing. So really, God put an end to their misery and preserved a family from which would come a civilization, and he would give them now 10 laws. I created you. I made you. And I made you for my pleasure because I loved you so much, and I made you exactly like me. To be fruitful and multiply and subdue and take dominion. So if you think that there's anything greater than me, you're going to self-destruct. Please don't do it. I'm telling you how to live and how to have life more abundantly. I got you out of Egypt, and I told you to rest. So you could be reminded every single week that you're not a slave. I know you're excited, and I know you love to work, and I know you want to keep going and going and going, but you need to observe this day of rest so you can always be reminded that you're not a slave to anything or anyone ever again. So don't think that your beautiful house, your great car, or the beach house, or whatever, don't bow down to those things, because if you do, those things are going to enslave you. And I made you to be free. Don't curse me, because if you curse me, you're destroying yourself. I made you like me. Your thoughts have power, but your words have authority. When you curse me, you're bringing destruction upon your very physiology and anatomy that I made and that I fine-tune and that I sustain. You're destroying your children, your spouses, your relationships, your companies. Don't do it. I gave you life. I sustain your life. I'm telling you the total truth so you can thrive. Rest. You have to have a day of rest. You must have a day of rest, because that's what reminds you that you're not a slave. You're not a slave to any man. And when your children are in weekend sports, say, no. We have one day of rest. And if you say, oh, but it's their sports, but we have to do this or that. No. Do you know how many families have been destroyed because of kids' athletic programs? It's disgusting. We've made idols out of our children and everything they can become, so we sign them up for everything. And it's destructive. Please don't do that. I gave you life. This is another deception. I know it looks like they're going to become and do all these amazing things. But remember, I made you all human beings first. Don't do. Be. Learn how to be. Divine relationships. Honor your mother and your father. That means you don't disrespect them. Not that they're wonderful, perfect people. Don't worry, they're broken just like you. And rest assured, you'll make a lot of the same mistakes they did. But they'll be probably underground by the time you truly figure it out, and then you'll miss them. They gave you life. And they're the vehicle by which, through which, in which you came into time. And they too are assaulted and confused in a state of chaos about things they don't understand. I gave you grace, unmerited favor. You and humanity, said God. I promise never to destroy anybody again. Can you extend each other what I've also extended you? And that's mercy. I gave you grace, unmerited favor. Can you also extend each other mercy like I extended you? That means I overlook offenses. A man is perfected by the things he suffers. Everything you hate about your parents, I can use to refine you, even though there's forces that oppose all of us, that threaten our sanity for sure, in reconciling these truths. But these were commands given to them to sustain their life. There's a lot of ways to kill somebody and take their life. It starts with a thought. It transitions into words. It's what gives our thought life. But then there's actions, and we hurt each other in such profound ways. God said, stop it. Because those people that you're murdering, in whatever way you're accomplishing to do it, there's lots of ways to take a life, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and certainly physically. But don't you see that you're destroying yourself? You're destroying the most sacred thing about yourself. We fornicate in our hearts. We violate our conscience. And adultery is the outward thing we do. Then we act and we enter into illicit relationships with a person, a place, or a thing. Doesn't matter. Adultery isn't just cheating on your spouse. You cheat on you before you cheat on your spouse. You violate your own conscience. You're desecrating yourself. And he said, don't do it. Trust me, I'm going to send my son and you're going to be his bride. And he's going to come and make you whole and pure. I'm going to bring you back to myself. This is the marriage vow that God entered into in Mount Sinai. It's like an agreement with his people. Be married to me. Of course, we know their history that follows. They fornicate in their heart. They commit adultery. And the book of Jeremiah talks about the whoredom that became Israel. And God warned them against it. But it all begins in your heart. Guard your heart above all else. Don't do that. Because everything in your life comes from your heart. And I made you to live. Remember, I made you to advance life. This will kill you. And we all have so many examples of that. You don't take something that doesn't belong to you. Not gifts, not talents, not blessings, not a car, not a bike, nothing. Things don't belong to you. You don't take it. You just don't do it. You do not take things that do not belong to you. God gave you and I'll add and say that God says don't take it because I gave you everything you need to accomplish everything that's written in that book of life I mentioned earlier. And you'll know what it is because I gave you desires and I gave you dreams and I gave you hopes. And even your fears will direct you. Just trust me. I'll guide you through this, but keep this law. Don't lie. The father of lies and the author of confusion that came to kill, steal, and destroy is who broke you, your ancestors, in the beginning. And he broke them because he created a breach in communication from me, the life giver, and the image I gave you, spirit, soul, and body, so you could be self-contained like us. And the capacity to be fruitful and multiply and subdue and take dominion of. He breached everything within your balance, harmony, and coherence, and within your spirit, soul, and your body to accomplish all those things, to be like me. And he did it with lies. And be careful. Here's how the lies will come. I want, I need, and I deserve. That's how they're going to show up in your life. And this is what he'll whisper. Did God really say? You can't. Do what you want. He's lying. You're not going to die. Do what you want. And the final lie, he's holding out on you. He doesn't want you to be like him. And those 3 lies will always show up in I want, I need, and I deserve. And God said, don't take the bait. They'll destroy you. Do not lie. By nature, Adam and Eve gave up your birthright, which was direct communication with me. But this doesn't have to destroy you. Don't lie. And you'll be okay. It goes back to having an idolatrous heart. I think that last command is a compounding of all the others. If you add all the others up, I think it's summarized in this last one. And it'll all be a lie that will destroy you because you'll have idols and you think you're a law unto yourself so much that you'll kill each other for it. And the worst thing you'll ever do is destroy your mom and dad and not honor them. And I chose them to give you life. But then you're going to even use my very name in vain if you do that. So I'm giving you these 10 commandments so that you can live. Although your power, your authority to live according to the counsel of your own will has been tainted, and your power sometimes, that means to put everything into action, is misused, don't worry, says every book in the Old Testament in its own way. I'm going to make everything whole again, and I'm going to keep my promise to bring you back to me. And I'm going to send you my son if you can understand how to self-govern, how to take the authority that I gave you, the power that I'm going to restore. You will be free. But you've got to be willing to step into a place of rest and examine yourself. By the way, I've written these laws in your heart. Your conscience bears witness of the truth of these commandments. And I did that so you would recognize they came from me, your dad, your father. And I'm going to send my son to seal the deal. He's going to come and be full man, just like you, so he can, in a lawful way, with the power and the authority that he exercises through self-discipline, he will not violate his conscience. He will not become a law unto himself, even when he's starving and he's tempted. And the worst of the worst evil forces can come upon him. He will not violate his conscience. He will not become a law unto himself. And he will put every desire in his flesh to death, and he will have authority over it. And when he sheds his blood, because the life of the soul is in the blood, something's going to be unleashed in time that will give you power and authority, if you want it, to rule and overrule in the lives of everything that rises up to assault you. You will be truly free. Because my son is making this possible. He's restoring the law that I used to create and sustain everything in advanced life. He's using that law, and he's not breaking one commandment, nothing. Because that's how he's going to destroy the power of darkness in time. There is evil that opposes you, but that evil, Lucifer, who became Satan, who's now the accuser, who comes to kill, steal, and destroy, he got that power, that delegated power from Adam and Eve. They forfeited it. He deceived them, and they gave it up. And that's why they began to die. But my son is restoring all that on your behalf. And that is the legal system that I've set in place. The world is mine and everything in it. I gave one law, but then I gave 10 commandments. And now I'm back to one invitation to restore everything to its lawful place. But you have authority to decide, according to the counsel of your will, which side you want to align yourself with. Do you want to align yourself with me, that created, sustains, and advances life? Or Do you want to become a law unto yourself? And I will guarantee you, you will self-destruct. That's the choice we have now. The promise of rest is the gift of freedom. I don't think there's any better way to understand law than to go read the 10 Commandments, Google them, look it up, pull it up on ChatGPT, and everybody should ask themselves, is there an internal battle raging within me that makes adhering to these things almost impossible? And if the answer to that is yes, well, then you understand the cross, because an atonement had to be made. No battle is ever won. No war is ever finished without a lot of blood. But this was the blood. This was the blood, the authority and the power and the blood of the creator of the universe that was shed for all of us so that we would have the capacity to self-govern. Because now there's something bigger than us dwelling in us. And for that reason and that reason alone, we can step into rest. And the one day of rest that is a commandment is so you could all be reminded that you will never again be slaves, not without your consent. So now you have a greater law that we invite you to acknowledge and experience that dwells within you, and a greater power and a greater authority than just yourself. But it's all best explained in the context of really this historic person whose life was really well documented in ancient documents. And that's Jesus of Nazareth. I think it's providential that Charlie's last book is Stop in the Name of God. The book is about rest and keeping the Sabbath. The book he wrote, we invite people to learn and understand in the context of an invitation to live in the rhythm of rest so you can be free. Jesus is the chief cornerstone, and he said, of my government, there will be no end. No matter how dark things seem, the government of God is expanding in the souls of men, because 2025 years ago, man became the dwelling place of God. Great story, but it's not for the faint of heart. The heritage of this great nation is one of faith, and the legacy has been and will continue to be one of strength and honor, because the spine of this republic is made in that triune constitution of our triune God that invites us to rest so we can live free.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about rest, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of Rest. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of rest, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.